Hello, this is our week 3, day 3 reflection video, and we're going to be previewing what we're covering tomorrow, which is reasonable domain and range from a real world situation. I'm going to be modeling two techniques. The first technique is called the 3 reads, and it's how we break down and get all the important information. And the second technique is to create a table of values to help us figure out, what is the reasonable domain, what is the reasonable range, whatever the problem is asking us for. So, starting off with the first read of the 3 reads, because you actually do read it 3 times. The point is to read the whole problem through the situation, try to get a general idea of what the problem is talking about, and to focus on the goal of what it's actually asking. So, I'm going to do the first read. The total cost to buy uniforms for the players on a volleyball team is a function of the number of uniforms bought. The uniform company charges $34.95 per uniform plus a $6.25 shipping fee for the entire order. There are at least 8 players, but not more than 12 players on the volleyball team. What is the reasonable range for this situation? So, generally speaking, this problem is about a volleyball team needing to buy uniforms and the cost that they're going to have to pay for that. But specifically, the goal that it's asking us to find is what is the reasonable range for this situation. So when we answer it, we're looking this question, we're looking for our goal, and I ask my students, what is the one word? What is it asking you to find? Tell me in one word. And hopefully someone will look at it and say range. So in one word, it's asking me to find range. Now that's the first read. The second read is to actually break it down and pull out all the important information, but reading all the way through can be cumbersome, and some people tend to get lost in the words. So we do what we call smaller sections or chunks. We chunk it out. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to put a slash mark where there is a period, wherever we see a period. And some people even chunk it out further. They say look for the words and, but, and or, because then that can also be a nice little break point. So I see the word but there, so I'm going to use that. Now we've got some smaller sections, and we're going to read it and see if there's anything mathematically important. If there is, we're going to write it over here and then break it down. So first section of the second read, the total cost to buy uniforms for the players on a volleyball team is a function of the number of uniforms bought. That's nice background information, but there's nothing mathematically important in there. So I'm just going to mark through. I can still see it, but I'll mark through to show that I've dealt with it. Second chunk, the uniform company charges $35.95 per uniform plus a $6.25 shipping fee for the entire order. And you have to say, is there anything mathematically important there? Yes, there's actually 2 pieces of mathematically important information. The first one, and it doesn't really matter what order they write them in, but I'm just going to write them in the order that they were written, is the $34.95. The second one is the $6.25. But people often just write the numbers. Even just as important is what they are about, what they are for. Labels are hugely important. Labels are your life, so we need to write down what those numbers are for. The $34.95 says per uniform, which means like each uniform. Each, per, and every are sort of interchangeable in math. And then the second one, the $6.25 was a shipping fee, and notice it's got a plus there, so I'm just going to put that it's an added fee. And then I'm going to mark through that section because we've dealt with it. The third little section says there are at least 8 players, and yes, there is something mathematically important there, the fact that you have to have at least 8 players, and I am going to put those qualifying words because that doesn't mean you have to have just 8 players. At least 8 players means not 6, not 7. You have to have at least 8, but you could also have 9, and that's important because that means at least 8 uniforms must be bought. I'm going to mark through it. And then the next section says not more than 12 players on the volleyball team. So there's another set of qualifying words. No more than 12 players, which means no more than 12 uniforms. So not 13 uniforms, not 14 uniforms, just 12 uniforms is the max. So that's the second read. Once you get back to where you've highlighted your goal, you're kind of done. And I don't ever mark off my goal because I want to keep it sort of prominent. Now the third read is a summary. In order to see that you've got a good idea of what the problem is about, you've got all the important information pulled out in a user-friendly method, we sort of can set up a screen here, cover up the situation, but then look and see if we can't summarize it, sort of like reading it again, but only reading it from the break it down area. So I can say, well, I know this is about a team that's buying uniforms. My goal is to figure out the range. Each uniform is $34.95. There's an added shipping fee of $6.25. I have to have at least 8 players on the team, so that means at least 8 uniforms to buy. But I can't have any more than 12 players on the team, so I'm not going to be buying any more than 12 uniforms. So that summary, you should be able to sort of rephrase everything in the situation, but without having to go back and read every single sentence again. So it makes it a little bit quicker and more user-friendly to find your information when you need it. So that's the 3 reads and how to break down a problem. The next thing is to create a table, because remember, domain and range is about X and Y values. We've seen that before. So it would be good to create an X and a Y table of those values. Now, as far as trying to figure out, well, which are the X values and which are the Y values, again, go back to your important information and you're looking for 2 different things that are kind of related, um, but that you're going to use to figure out like the problem here. So I'm noticing I've got uniforms, which is the same thing as players. But I'm just going to do uniforms, and then basically I've got cost here. How much is everything going to cost? So those are my 2 different things. One of them is going to be my X, and one of them is going to be my Y. Now remember, the Y is the dependent variable, and cost depends upon how many uniforms you buy. So since cost is dependent, cost is going to be my Y. The uniforms is independent. Another way I've heard people explain this that I like is to look at sort of cause and effect, or what happens first and what's the result, what happens second. So I'm going to go with the first and second. First, you have to decide how many uniforms that you're going to buy based upon how many players you have. So the uniforms is first, that means it's the independent X. And then as a result, you're going to have to pay for them. So how much that cost happens second. So that's the dependent, that's the Y. And I kind of like that one because it also follows a lot of what happens in science with cause and effect, or history with cause and effect. So it's just something that students can more easily relate to. Okay, so we're going to make the table. Now I know it says up here that we need 8 players to 12 players. That means 8 to 12 uniforms, but I can't just start with 8. Basically, you have to go in order. Technically speaking, you wouldn't have to order any uniform, so 0. And then what happens if you ordered 1 and 2? It'll take some time, but you do have to do all these background numbers in order to finally get to how much it cost for 8 uniforms, and then how much it's going to cost for 9 and 10, 11, and finally we can stop at 12 because it said no more than 12. So that's my X side. Now I need to figure out my Y side. Now let's go back over here and said, okay, some people would make the mistake of saying, well, if you don't buy any uniforms, you don't have a cost. But you do. This little extra fee here, I'm going to do that in red. That means that that's extra. So basically, technically, 0 uniforms, you already have a fee because you're going to have to pay for the shipping. So you already have a cost, and that cost is $6.25. Okay, now since each uniform is going to cost you $34.95, Okay, when now you order one, I'm going to go like this, you're going to have to add that $34.95. So that next number is going to end up being, if you just ordered one, $41.20. So that's the price of the uniform plus the shipping fee. If you add another uniform to your order, which you have to, then you're going to have to pay again another $34.95. So you're going to have to add that on there again. And if you do another uniform, you're going to have to add that on there again, because each uniform that you add to your order is going to increase it by $34.95, since each uniform costs $34.95. So as you add this on every time, you just end up creating a table of values, which I'm just going to write down. Is if I add it on here for 2 uniforms, and then I add the $34.95 for 3 uniforms, and then I add it again, the $34.95 for 4 uniforms, and you just keep adding forward to build your table. I'm just going to keep building it out for you so you can see it. And I'm just keeping on adding $34.95 to each section until I get it all filled up, so I have all the values that I need. Oops. And I'm going to highlight, now that I got my table filled out, that what I'm really looking at is this area right here. Because remember, we had to have at least 8 players, so at least 8 uniforms. And we had to have no more than 12. So this is what I'm looking for right here, this area. And then the last thing I'm going to identify, but I'm not going to actually finish out the final answers, but I will highlight the fact that since the goal asked us for the range, and range is our y values, then it's really, once we get the table filled out, this side that we're looking for. Now, it may not just be a list of these numbers. It depends on whether it's continuous or discrete, which we will look at in our embedded lesson video. But these numbers are going to be involved some way, shape, or form. And that's an idea of how to use the 3 reads method to pull out important information, and a table method to get the important numbers that we need in order to sort of take a word problem and break it down and make it easier to finally answer. And we didn't do the final answer on this one, but we will do it in our teach video.